Okay, we are now on to item number 19. And I know that Chair Inman it pained her to have to leave because she's done a lot of work on these items, and but she's being very, very cautious to not show any kind of conflict of interest of any kind. So we're going to move ahead. She works for a company that's, if you played Monopoly, they own Boardwalk and they own Pennsylvania Avenue and all those green properties that I own. I just own Baltic Avenue. I don't have much property, and I always sweat it out when I go down that aisle because I have to pay. So here we are. We're going to turn some time over to Don Chesser to introduce and give us a summary of number 18, and then we'll go on to some speakers.
So thank you, Commissioners. So tab 19 is an action item for the adoption of the 2018 Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. This program provides $1.3 billion over the next 3 years. Staff has received 42 applications requesting $1.96 billion, which is above the capacity. All applications were evaluated based on the evaluation criteria as adopted in the guidelines and shown as attachment C of your book item. The projects proposed for funding support the objective of the program, which is to provide improvements on federally designated corridors of national and regional significance, on the primary freight network as identified in the California Freight Mobility Plan, and along other corridors that have a high volume of freight movement. The proposed projects include a variety of improvements that will increase the use of on-dock rail, improve safety, reduce impacts to surrounding communities, reduce border wait times, and increase rail capacity. Staff recommends funds totaling $1.39 billion for 28 projects. The total proposed programming exceeds the identified capacity of approximately $53 million. The additional capacity is supported by the use of the federal funding apportionment level rather than the federal obligation authority. I would like to acknowledge Crystal Ortiz and Darwin Vargas from Caltrans, and of course Lori Waters from our own staff, for their assistance and participation in the application review process. And I'm keeping my comments very short as anticipation of these next 3 items. So in conclusion, staff recommends the Commission adopt the 2018 Trade Corridor Enhancement Program of projects as shown in attachment B, and I'd be happy to address any questions.
Are there any questions of staff before we open up to public comment? Okay. We have a lot of speakers that want to speak on this and the next couple of items, so we're going to try to keep this fair to everybody. I know you've all, a lot of you showed up here to speak to your items, and you will get an opportunity to speak. We're going to keep it to 3 minutes, and we're going to enforce it. I will give some deference to elected officials. I know that Mayor Glenn Parker is here, or at least I think he's here, so he'll be first speaker. I don't have any others here that I recognize as being elected officials. If you are an elected official to speak on item 19, you can line up behind Mayor Parker, and you'll get your 3 minutes also. And then after that, I'll be calling 3 or 4 names at a time for you to line up so that we can move you through as efficiently as possible. And that's about it. If you are here to speak in support without any modifications, shorter is better. A short thank you is way better than a long one, especially in a warm room. So keep that in mind. Keep one other principle in mind too, just generally speaking. If you are not in supportive and you are trying to get additional money for a particular project that you care about, just realize that our staff has worked long and hard and worked with everybody and did a ton of outreach. This is a great product that they have worked on and put together. If you want additional money for a project that's not on this list, it's going to have to come at the expense. It would have to come at the expense of either another project in your locality or somebody else's locality. I mean, there isn't really any other way to get around that. So just remember that if you're pushing for additional money, that's going to be what you're basically asking for. So with that in mind, we'll start with Mayor Parker, and if there were any other elected officials that weren't on this list, then you can line up behind him.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Arp and members of the Commission. I'm Glenn Parker, Mayor of the City of Brea. On behalf of the Brea City Council and the Brea community, I want to sincerely thank you for consideration of the SR 57 Lambert Interchange Improvements Project. The SR 57 Lambert Interchange Project has been the highest priority traffic improvement project for the City of Brea for the past several decades. Brea has committed over $12 million for the project from our own local mitigation funds. In addition, we have recently obtained over $12 million from the 2018 OCTA Measure 2 funds for construction. Our collective goal is to be in a positive position to be ready to list this project for bids in early fall. I want to express support for the recommendation to adopt the 2018 Trade Corridor Enhancement Program Resolution, TCEPP 1718-01, and staff's recommendation to fund the City of Brea and Caltrans District 12 SR 57 Lambert Road Interchange Improvement Project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. Okay, we are going to ask Mark Hansen to come up to the microphone, and he'll be followed by Michael Murphy, and he'll be followed by Mark Christoffels.
Hi, good afternoon, Vice Chair Arp. My name's Mark Hansen. I'm here on behalf of Senator Josh Newman. Senator Newman was proud to stand with 80 of his colleagues, notably of both parties, to vote to pass SB 1 roughly a year ago this month. With those funds currently hitting the streets in our local areas, he expresses his gratitude that the local streets and roads programs are funding replacements of curbs, gutters, sidewalks, etc. Across the 29th district, from Cypress to Diamond Bar, and of course Brea, as you just heard, we are seeing these improvements across the state from Fortuna to Fontana. That we are seeing sealing of cracks and the spreading of slurry seal, and we think it's making the lives of Californians better. Today, the Commission will take up the competitive grants, and we're grateful of the staff's work. This deliberate and systematic process was designed to ensure that SB 1 funds were efficiently employed, allocated based on criteria about both the economic impact as well as the quality of life impacts in our communities. It would appear that staff has achieved its desired goals, and based on the number of applications and the sum of money requested, it would also appear that there's a great deal of need across the state. With more than 165 applications received and $5.3 billion of cumulative value and only $2.6 billion in awards, we know that there's a lot of work to do. The Commission and its staff deserve a great deal of credit for rigorously reviewing, analyzing, qualifying and prioritizing these applications. I want to note two particular projects in our area that we're very grateful for being included in the staff report, and that's the 5760 confluence, one of the more highly trafficked and impacted areas. That's a choke point relief program, as well as the 57 Lambert Road interchange improvement. So without going into further detail, I would just like to express the Senator's gratitude for all of the work that you put in, all the work that the staff put in, and simply say that Senator Newman respectfully encourages the Commission to adopt the staff recommendations when appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen. And we are equally grateful for his supportive role in this program. It's been very critical. Michael Murphy.
Good afternoon, members of the Commission. I am Michael Murphy. I'm the Intergovernmental Relations Manager for the City of Santa Clarita. I am pleased to be here today to reiterate the Santa Clarita City Council's strong support for the Interstate 5 Golden State Choke Point Relief Program application submitted by the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority and Caltrans. This project offers a comprehensive approach to fixing congestion and addressing safety along a critical stretch of Interstate 5 in North Los Angeles County. Santa Clarita is now the third most populous municipality in Los Angeles County and the 17th out of the 482 municipalities in the state of California. The extensive local population growth and economic growth of our community, when combined with statewide population growth and heightened regional, state, and national demand for better facilitated goods movement, has placed increasing and significant pressure on Interstate 5 and arterials serving our community. The improvements envisioned under this application will also facilitate better transportation and goods movement in and through our community, particularly in the event of disasters, whether they be closures due to wildfires or traffic accidents, both of which occur with increasing regularity in our corridor. Again, on behalf of the Santa Clarita City Council, I request your approval of the recommended action. Thank you for your consideration of my comments.
Mark Christoffel? If I got your last name correctly.
You did it great, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm here representing the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments. We are a COG of 31 cities representing just over 2 million people. And we are in favor of staff's recommendation, so I'll keep that simple. But I also wanted to step up and also compliment the commission and Susan and all of her staff for an amazing job. And I'm going to do it as an applicant. We always talk about how you get the funding. Assemblymember Frazier knows there was so much effort in getting this thing done. Sometimes we lose sight of the implementation. And from our standpoint, there's tremendous amount of hours put into these applications. And then we call it the hurry up and wait syndrome, where we submit these applications. These are projects that are ready to go, and then we have to sit there and literally put them on the shelf waiting for the results of a competitive process. Not to belittle my friends at the federal government, but the infra is kind of an example of that, where we've been waiting an extraordinary long time. To have been able to submit an application in January and to be standing right here today and several months later and to be awarding these projects, what a benefit, what an asset, what a way to show the citizens of California when we moved SB 1 forward, we meant business. And we are up to that challenge, you guys, to deliver these projects as quickly as you went and awarded them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, David Liu, Michelle Grubbs, and Richard Harmon.
Good afternoon. I am David Liu, the Public Works Director and City Engineer for the City of Diamond Bar. So, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the Commission, first of all, thank you, and thank you for your commitment, your support to fix the 5760 confluence area. This is also the area that's ranked 5th worst truck bottleneck in the country by the American Transportation Research Institute. So with the $22 million that you're recommending and considering this afternoon, we're going to use that money towards the design work and including the right-of-way engineering. We will get that work done within 2 years. And in the next couple of years, we will also work very hard partnering with our with the other stakeholders at Caltrans, Metro, and cities in San Gabriel Valley, our COG as well. We want to put together a full funding plan. So starting in the year 2021, you will see the mainline improvements along that critical interchange area. So thank you again. And thank you the staff for your dedication, your hard work. And this is great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michelle Grubbs?
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Grubbs. I'm the Vice President of the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association. PMSA members represent the shipping lines and container terminal operators that operate at the port. So basically, we are the customers and tenants at the ports here on the West Coast. PMSA strongly supports the staff recommendation for the Southern California Rail Project. This project was developed in partnership with the Port of Los Angeles, the Port of Long Beach, and the Alameda Corridor East. The project is transformative corridor approach to improving rail infrastructure. It will relieve congestion, improve safety, mitigate adverse community impacts, reduce air emissions, and increase our competitive position. We want to thank the CTC staff for all their hard work on this, and we respectfully ask the Commission to adopt the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Harmon.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. Richard Harmon here on behalf of the City of Moreno Valley. We want to support the staff recommendations for the TCEP program. We have a truck safety project on State Route 60 on the list, and just really want to thank legislature, governor, all the proponents for SB1, as well as all the hardworking, dedicated staff at the commission and with Caltrans, and would urge your approval of the item. Thank you.
Thank you. This is going very well.
Don't jinx it.
We'll go with Eric Martell, Ray Wolf, and Allison Yo.
Mr. Acting Chair,
Yes.
Chairman Jim Frazier has to leave to go back to Sacramento, and I just think we should all thank him again for his leadership on SB1.
Good afternoon. I'm Eric Martell, and on behalf of the Executive Director of Gene Stroke at the Port of Los Angeles, we're fully in support of the CTC's staff recommendations and would like to thank the CTC staff for supporting the Port of Los Angeles 2 projects, the Terminal Island Railroad Enhancement Project and the Southern Terminus Gap Closure Project. As the largest trade gateway in the Western Hemisphere, the Southern California Rail Project is the only TCEP application that invests in rail corridor strategy to reduce projected truck trips on the most congested highway network in the world. On-dock rail improvements will result in 20% more containers loaded onto trains at the Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach, eliminating a total of 5,900 truck trips per day from congested highways and 76,800 truck miles traveled per day. Not only does it reduce truck trips, it would also help the Port of LA and Long Beach stay competitive and more efficient in moving our containers. In addition, 1 in 9 jobs in the LA region are associated with the ports of LA and Long Beach, and this funding makes sure that those jobs stay here in California. Again, thank you for your consideration of supporting staff's recommendation.
Thank you. Ray Wolf.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair ARP, Commissioners. Ray Wolf of the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority. I want to express our appreciation for your recognition of the important projects we are advancing in our county. The recommended awards for the I-10 and US 395 projects in the Trade Corridors Program, as well as awards in the Congested Corridors and the Local Partnership Program, will help us to deliver on important commitments to our voters by leveraging our local sales tax dollars with state funding through SB1. This will help us also to address critical national goods movement corridors in our county, and I urge your support on all of these items, both 19, 20, and 21. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Allison Yo.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair ARP and members of the Commission. My name is Allison Yo, and on behalf of the Port of Long Beach, I'm here to express our gratitude for your support for the TCEP funding. And I will add my comments to what you've heard already in terms of acknowledging the very hard work that the CTC staff has put into everything from soup to nuts, trying to get the funding rolled out in a very effective and efficient manner. I'm here to support the recommended program that your staff has put together, and in particular, you've already heard from a number of prior speakers about the Southern California Rail Program and its importance of that to the freight rail system. And the Port of Long Beach is very pleased to be working with our partners in a very coordinated corridor approach on this, and that project represents one of the Long Beach efforts to move more cargo by rail and fewer by truck. And I'll just add that with the support of TCEP funding, we should be able to deliver this project, I think Hassan put it, put that money to work, and we're willing to put that money to work. We anticipate advertising our construction bids by the end of the year, December 2018. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. And finally, Art Dow.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair and member of the of the Commission. Almost called the Alameda County Transport, but you're not. I'm Art Dow here, representing on the behalf of the Alameda County Transportation Commission and our partner, the Port of Oakland. Of course, I'm here to say thank you very much for your hard work, your leadership, your continuing support of all good transportation projects and programs, not only in our county, but across the state. Of course, I'm here this afternoon to urge you to support staff's recommendation on funding, on programming SB1 funds to the various programs. By approving these programs and projects, Commissioner, you are actually putting gas tax to work. Along with our major BB sale tax in Alameda County, you are actually investing in the Port of Oakland. You're actually investing to relieve congestion on our freeways and our rail network. You're actually investing to making sure that the Port of Oakland is more efficient and keeping its economic competitiveness throughout the West Coast. So I want to make sure that you know that. This is about, as much as congestion relief, it's about economic development and good paying jobs. And you have my commitment and my commission's commitment to put these dollars to work. We're gonna turn some dirt here in a few months. So I want to make sure that you have the commitment from us to get Project Shovel ready. So thank you very much. The other thing I want to make mention is I want to thank you, Susan, and her great staff here at CTC. I have never seen a team that have accomplished so much with so little staffing resources in such a small amount of time. So hats off to you. If you could, Commissioner, please give Susan and her staff the biggest raise that you can afford, and also send them off to a good vacation. So with that, Commissioner, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dow. I hardly endorse what you've said. You know, this item, the next two items are three of the most important votes we as a commission have taken just about, I've been here for 11 years, and there isn't anything we've done that's more important than this. And we've done some pretty good stuff back with passage of Prop 1B and so forth. But when I look at what we did, the staff worked hard and did a lot of great work back then, as you all know. But this eclipsed all of that. This is amazing what they've done in these last few months. So, again, congratulations are in order. Okay, that concludes the speakers for this particular item. Do we have any
Move
comments?
for approval. Second.
Okay, we got a motion for approval, a second. Any comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Okay, we are now on to item number 20, adoption of the 2018 Solutions for Congested Corridors program. And Teresa Favell, you are on board.
Thank you, Commissioner. Item 20 is an action item. This is the adoption of the 2018 Solutions for Congested Corridors program. The Solutions for Congested Corridors program provides $250 million annually to fund projects designed to reduce congestion in highly traveled and highly congested corridors through performance improvements that balance transportation, community, and the environment. As the saying goes, it's not the destination, it's the journey. And it has been a journey. A journey that started almost a year ago with the development of the guidelines that were adopted by the Commission on December 6, 2017. That established the initial funding cycle for the program as a 4-year program covering years, fiscal years 17-18 through 2021 with $1 billion of funding. The deadline for project submittal was February 16, 2018. The Commission received a total of 32 nominations seeking over $2.5 billion in funding. A multidisciplinary team was formed to evaluate the 32 nominations. For each nomination, the team developed a consensus rating, and the projects recommended for funding were determined to be the most competitive projects based on the adopted criteria. Staff recommendation includes funding 9 projects for $1,006,098,000. The proposed programming includes over-programming this cycle by slightly over $6 million to include all eligible projects that had a consensus rating medium, high, or greater. The recommended projects will provide a variety of multimodal transportation improvements in highly traveled and highly congested corridors. Recommendations include 5 transit stations, approximately 11 miles of new track for passenger and commuter rail, over 70 miles of high occupancy vehicle and express lanes, about 18 miles of active transportation improvements, transportation management systems that includes 35 miles of traffic light synchronization, bus purchases, and local road improvements. It should be noted that a few of these projects in the recommended list will be complementary or are part of a corridor to projects that have been awarded by the Transportation Agency in the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program. Overall, all the recommended projects support the primary program objective to reduce congestion in highly traveled corridors that have a positive environmental impacts while providing significant benefits to communities throughout the state. Of course, this would not have been accomplished without the help of a superb team. I would like to acknowledge the following staff that made up the evaluation team. From Caltrans, Leah Shepard, Jeannie Ward-Waller, and Marlo Tinney. CTC staff, Garth Hopkins, Robert Nelson, Juan Guzman, and Terry Anderson. Their time, experience, and perspective were invaluable and greatly appreciated. This concludes my remarks, and staff will be happy to answer any questions. But I should do my recommendation first, right? Okay. Staff recommends the commission adopt the projects in the 2018 Solutions for Congested Corridors program, as reflected in staff recommendations, with the following change. Change the funding year for the Bravo Main Street Rapid Bus project in Orange County. The fiscal year of delivery should be 2021. With that change, staff recommends your approval.
Second. Any comment or questions for staff from the commissioners before we open it up to public comment? Okay, we're going to start with Consuelo Hernandez, Ann Richmond, and Ellen Smith.
And if I could just say, Mr. Chair, unless the speakers want to talk us out of a vote, they might want to consider brevity as well.
All right, I'll take the hint. Consuelo Hernandez, Director of Governmental Affairs for the City of Sacramento, thanking the staff for all their great work, and we are here to support 2 critical regional projects, the SAC 5 corridor enhancements, I-5 HOV lanes Phase 1 project, and the US 50 multimodal corridor enhancements project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Ann Richmond with MTC staff, and I just wanted to express our sincere appreciation for the hard work of the Commission and the staff, and as well Caltrans and Cal STA, to get all of the SB1 programs up and running and to make these awards possible. MTC supports the staff proposals for the congested corridors, the trade, and the local partnership programs, and we look forward to working with you to deliver these projects that are so important to the Bay Area's economy and mobility. Thank you.
Thank you. Ellen Smith.
Good afternoon. I'm Ellen Smith from BART. I wanted to speak very briefly on a BART project that was not recommended by staff to be advanced, and that was our Trans-Bay Corridor Core Capacity Program, the Train Control Modernization Program. 2 benefits of this project. BART does carry 2/3 of the peak hour traffic in the morning across the Bay Bridge, and the Core Capacity Project would increase our capacity by up to 45%. Our application did score high, and in light of that, we would like to request that BART staff is able to meet with CTC staff in Sacramento to discuss this important project following the vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would support that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we'll go with Shirley Medina, Daryl Johnson, and Suzanne Smith.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I would like to express on behalf of RCTC's appreciation to the commission and staff for their efforts in working with the regions, holding the many guideline workshops throughout the state, and I know I got a bump in my Southwest miles, and being accessible and receptive to the many questions that they fielded and putting in the countless hours in evaluating these really good projects. The Congested Corridors Program is a very important program to relieve congestion throughout the state, and we look forward to the benefits of all these projects and look forward to future funding cycles. Thank you.
Darrell Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman and Commissioners with the Orange County Transportation Authority. I'm here to thank and be somewhat disappointed, but in a good way. So I also want to say everything that has been said about Susan and her staff. It truly is outstanding. I wouldn't say that if it wasn't true, so thank you for your hard work. The only point I would make is that we have a unique corridor in the State Route 55. It's had an HOV lane since 1987, and our proposal was a joint project with Caltrans to add a second HOV lane over 5 miles, add a general purpose lane as part of our sales tax measure, do transit and active transportation, and we're very, very pleased that a portion of that has been funded, but we do express some minor disappointment that the second HOV lane wasn't funded. I've communicated with Ms. Branson many times on that, and I look forward to opportunities working with the commission staff to make sure we can do the entire project, because I think it does leverage our local sales tax program with the state funds and really give us the best bang for the buck. So we urge your staff, or urge you to approve the staff recommendation, and again, look forward to looking for other options to fully fund the rest of the program. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. Suzanne Smith.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioner. Suzanne Smith, Executive Director of Sonoma County Transportation Authority. I want to echo the comments and commendations about your staff. They've been exceptional to work with throughout this process. We want to support the staff recommendation, and we are eager to deliver the last piece of Highway 101 in Sonoma County. So thank you.
Almost enough to make me move back to Petaluma. Wait a long time for that stretch of road. We have 4 speakers left, so I'm going to name all 4 right now. First is Chris Flores, Margie Kern, yes, and James Corliss, and Sandy Wong.
Chair, Commissioners, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. My name is Chris Flores. I'm a Special Assistant to the General Manager at Sacramento Regional Transit, Henry Lee. I'm here on behalf of Henry and the Sacramento Regional Transit Board of Directors to thank you and convey our appreciation for, of the Sacramento region, as well as our neighboring transit agencies, businesses, commuters, both riders and drivers. Thank you for this recent award recommendation. Having held several commission hearings in the Sacramento area, you understand that our region is unique, diverse, and experiencing tremendous growth. We're fostering strong support of regional partnerships that understand the nexus between transportation, economic development, and jobs. This award, along with the TRCP announcement, will allow SAC-RT to continue its relentless pursuit towards improving transportation options, including transforming our rail fleet to low-floor cars and performing infrastructure enhancements to allow for 15-minute service frequency into the city of Folsom. So with that, I urge you to support the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Margie Kern from Santa Barbara County Association of Governments, and I want to echo the kudos to the staff. They've done an enormous job, and I want to support the US 101 Santa Barbara multimodal project. You supported it in the freight, so I'm assuming you're going to support it in this one too, and it will fully fund 15 miles of HOV lane in our corridor, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vice Chair, Commissioners, James Corliss, CEO from the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, or SACOG. I'm usually here to try to talk to you about autonomous vehicles and technology, but here it's lanes and trains, and we stand in strong support of the staff recommendation to congested corridor grants that are going to be critical to our region. Some people have asked if we have congestion in Sacramento. Yes, indeed. We've arrived as a big major metropolitan area, and we have some of the worst congestion in the state. The city of Sacramento has the highest population increase in over the last year of any city in California. We are booming and we're becoming a mega region with the Bay Area. Strong support of the staff recommendation. Huge kudos to Susan and her entire staff. And while I have you, the local partnership program, so I don't stand up again a second time, very strong support of the LPP and the 4 projects that are in there for our region as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and Commissioners and all your honoraries sitting up there. Sandy Wong, Executive Director of City County Association of Governments. Strong support for staff recommendation. We urge you to adopt the 2018 Solution for Congested Corridors program. We really echo every speaker before me. Thank Susan and her great team for leading this effort, for leading this amazing journey to get us here today. We really appreciate all your hard work and open process. Thank you to the Commission and your great staff.
Thank you. That concludes the speakers for this item. Do we have any comments or questions from commissioners? Do I hear a motion? Do we get a motion?
Before the speakers.
Before the speakers?
Yeah, they jumped the gun.
Oh, well,
We're just
okay, you guys are moving. So Doug got the names. All right, we're good. All right. Can we have the vote now? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Okay, we are on to item number 21, adoption of 2018 Local Partnership Competitive Program. And Matthew, Scott, yeah.
Commissioners, tab 21 is an action item to adopt the 2018 Local Partnership Competitive Program of Projects. The competitive program's objective is to reward counties, cities, transit districts, and regional transportation agencies which have voter-approved or imposed fees or taxes solely dedicated to transportation improvements. The Commission established the 2018 Local Partnership Competitive Program as a 3-year, $300 million program. The first cycle of this program spans from fiscal year 2017-18 to 2019-20. On January 30th, 2018, the Commission received 90 project nominations seeking over $900 million. That's 3 times the program's capacity. Every project was evaluated based on the screening and evaluation criteria set forth in the Commission's adopted guidelines and also highlighted in Attachment C. The recommended projects were determined to be the projects that best addressed these criteria and were those that received the highest consensus ratings by the evaluation team. Staff recommends 27 projects totaling $308.8 million in Local Partnership Competitive Program funds. The proposed program of projects includes overprogramming by approximately $8.8 million to include all eligible projects that had a consensus rating of medium, high, or greater. The recommendation includes a variety of projects that support the objective of the Local Partnership Program and will provide multimodal transportation improvements in localities across the state. Collectively, the projects recommended will construct new transit stations, tracks for passenger rail, high occupancy vehicle and express lanes, active transportation improvements, traffic light synchronizations, bus purchases, and local road improvements and rehabilitation. At this time, I would like to thank the following staff members, both from CTC and Caltrans, for the invaluable assistance they provided through the evaluation process. Christine Gordon, Laura Pennybaker, Sharon Bertozzi, Alicia Sequeira-Smith, Amy McPherson, Darren Fong, Joe Borja, Jose Oseguera, Jacqueline Campion, and Eric Zeklin. With the adoption of the Local Partnership Competitive Program, just over $300 million in SB1 funding will be committed to vital transportation projects within our local and regional jurisdictions of all population sizes across the state. This funding will be crucial for these recipient agencies who will put these funds towards improving California's transportation infrastructure. Staff recommends the Commission adopt the program of projects in the 2018 Local Partnership Competitive Program as reflected in the staff recommendations with the one following change.
programming for the Western Placerville Interchanges Phase 2 project in El Dorado County should be reflected in fiscal year 2018-19 rather than 2017-18, which is currently shown. This concludes my staff remarks, and I can take any questions or remarks at this time.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Galnetti and a second by Commissioner Tavallone. Any questions of staff before we open up to public comment? Okay, well, we're going to move on to the next group of speakers. Dominic Corey, Michael Murphy, and Consuelo Hernandez.
Vice Chair and Commissioners, good afternoon. My name is Dominic Corey, and I'm here representing State Senator Anthony Portantino. The Senator would like to thank the Commissioners and staff for collaboratively working on local partnership program within SB1. When agencies work together, the state benefits, as does its residents. The Senator wants to add his voice to support the project on the Commission's agenda and respectfully asks you to approve the staff's recommendation and approve the items listed in tab 21. Adoption of 2018 Local Partnership Competitive Program. Many of these projects have been long planned and needed. Again, Senator Portantino appreciates the work of the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michael Murphy?
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. I'm Michael Murphy, the Intergovernmental Relations Manager for the City of Santa Clarita. I'm pleased to be here again to reiterate the Santa Clarita City Council's strong support of your staff recommendation in favor of the Vista Canyon Metrolink station. It's an outstanding public-private partnership, and we deeply appreciate the staff's recommendation and ask for your support today. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we had Consuelo Hernandez first.
This is me.
Oh.
No worries. Again, Consuelo Hernandez, Director of Governmental Affairs for the City of Sacramento. Want to thank again the staff for their recommendations and express our support for the Downtown Sacramento Grid 3.0 mobility project, which will provide some critical infrastructure to help improve biking, especially from neighborhoods south of downtown to north of downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got another three speakers here. Can't quite read this. John Baveri with San Fernando Valley Council of Government, Jeff Hewitt, and Michael Thornton.
Good afternoon. I'm John Boeri with the San Fernando Valley Council of Governments. I serve as Executive Director. We are a Council of Governments of 5 cities representing over 2 million residents in Los Angeles County. We want to thank staff for their recommendation, encourage you to approve this recommendation to support the 18-mile Metro Orange Line bus rapid transit improvements. This is going to serve a very important corridor for the region, and we encourage your support of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make this real quick. I'm Jeff Hewitt. I'm the mayor of the city of Calamasa. No, not Palamasa. That's just north there. We're a very small town, and we're going to triple in size over the next 10 to 15 years. We've got 7,200 new homes coming on. That's the big issue here in Calamasa. They're going to be affordable homes. We really, really appreciate with your recommendation to give us this improvement on County Line Road, because that keeps us good with our neighbors to the north in Yucaipa. So if you can go ahead and pass that through, we'd love it. We got to keep, right now it's a level D, and if you guys give us through an A, that'll be the first A I've ever got in my life. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Michael Thornton?
Yes. Michael Thornton, Contract City Engineer, City of Hesperia. We would like to echo the comments. We thank staff for their work and ask the Commission to approve the recommended list. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcella Ronzi.
Marcella Renzi, Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, here to support staff recommendation. Thank you to Caltrans, thank you to Commission staff, and most especially thank you to the Commissioners Together, we will manage the 101 corridor and tame the 101 Matilda interchange, which was featured yesterday in the Mercury News as the Matilda Monster. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the speakers for this item. I want to, you're just fixing something. Okay. I thought you were going to come up here and speak. Did you want to speak on any of these? I want to thank everybody for the great job you did of helping to get this done, but also of keeping it streamlined this afternoon. That concludes the speakers. Any comments from the commission before we put it up for a vote? Okay, and we've already got a motion and a second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. So is there someone from staff that can go get Chairman and have her come and resume her duties?
Do we want to take a 5 minutes to rearrange? Or do you want to keep going?
No, we'll just.
Okay, we'll take up item number 22. Robert?
There we go. Commissioners, a little too close. Tab 22 is an action item. This item will amend the SB1 accountability and transparency guidelines adopted at the March meeting. First, I'd like to thank Dawn for letting me help her with this. She put a lot of work in this. I know it's hard to let go of something like this, and she was patient with me when I was making changes and working with her and staff, so thank you for maybe a part of it. So during the March meeting, guidelines were adopted, but staff was asked to work with stakeholders to develop consequences to address non-compliance with the accountability guidelines. Staff held one workshop in April and worked with Caltrans to receive input on proposed amendments to the adopted guidelines. Subsection E was added to the guidelines to list the possible consequences for not meeting the accountability requirements. Other key changes include further defining accountability requirements, adjusting due dates for progress reports, and further defining the department's role as program administrator and its responsibility for establishing and implementing operating procedures and controls that are consistent with commission policies, guidelines, as well as state and federal regulations. In addition to the changes included in attachment C, staff recommends adoption of the change to page 4 that is included on the change list. In conclusion, staff would like to thank various stakeholders who participated in the guideline development process and look forward to implementing these guidelines to inform the Commission, public, and legislature on the status of progress of our SB1 programs. Staff recommends approval of the amended SB1 accountability and transparency guidelines. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have or as speakers come forward.
Do we have questions on Kaneisenberg, Commissioner?
I just want to say thank you. I know this, I know I was kind of a pain in the rear on some of this early on, so, but thank you, because this was, I thought you did a great job with these, so great job.
Any other comments? Do we have a motion on the floor? Second. We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner von Kaneisenberg. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining for the record? Thank you. Motion carries. We will move on. Item 23.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tab 23 is an action item to amend the 2018 Local Partnership Formulaic Program of Projects. The 2018 Local Partnership Formulaic Program is funded from $100 million annually in state funds authorized by Senate Bill 1 that are appropriated from the Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Account for the Local Partnership Program for fiscal year 17-18 and 18-19. The 2018 Local Partnership Formulaic Program share distribution was adopted by the Commission on December 6, 2017, and contained shares funding for 40 eligible agencies. The initial 2018 Local Partnership Formulaic Program of Projects was adopted by the Commission on January 31, 2018. The current program of projects total $174.2 million over fiscal year 17-18 and 18-19. This amendment will add programming of $6.5 million and include 6 new projects. Specifically, one agency requests to delete a project and is nominating a new project using the current formulaic programming shares. One agency requests to split a program project into 2 separate contracts using the current formulaic programming shares. And 3 agencies are nominating 3 separate projects to program the formulaic distribution shares. Therefore, this amendment will increase the 2018 Local Partnership Formulaic Program of Projects total to $180.6 million and a new total of 63 projects over fiscal year 17-18 and 18-19. The remaining $19.4 million in formulaic shares is expected to be programmed by the remaining eligible agencies by June 2019, the end of this current cycle. Staff recommends your approval of this item as presented in the staff recommendations, and I'll be happy to take any questions that you have. Thank you.
Questions of the staff? We have a motion by Commissioner Gometti, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you, Christine. We'll move on to item number 24. Lori.
Yes. Commissioners, this is an action item to adopt the 2019 Active Transportation Program Fund Estimate. Stephen Keck gave a presentation on the draft 2019 ATP Fund Estimate at the March meeting. The fund estimate is essentially unchanged since the draft. Staff recommends your approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Alvarado, a second by Commissioner Burke. Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you, Lori. Okay. Item 25.
Commissioners, the purpose, item 25 is a hearing on the 2019 Active Transportation Program guidelines. The purpose of this hearing is to obtain final public comment on the 2019 Active Transportation Program guidelines before adoption. The proposed 2019 ATP guidelines are included as an attachment to tab 26. Correspondence received on the guidelines are included as an attachment to this hearing item, tab 25. The Commission guidelines are to describe the policy, standards, criteria, and procedures for the development, adoption, and management of the Active Transportation Program. Staff brought forward a draft version of the guidelines at the March Commission meeting. Staff has held 10 workshops to hear discussion on the guidelines. The last workshop was held on April 17th. At the March Commission meeting, staff reviewed the major revisions to the guidelines, including that the application will be broken out into 5 different applications depending on the project type and size. Since the March meeting, there have been several other revisions to the guidelines. The first is that the small infrastructure application will not include points for leveraging of funds. The second is that staff added a process for implementers to move funds between phases with some restrictions that are detailed in the guidelines. The next is that the program will allow STIP and LPP formula funds to count as leveraged funds. Lastly, the reporting requirements now mirror the SB1 accountability and transparency guidelines. There's one edit that needs to be made to the guidelines. Under the scoring criteria, there should be 10 points available for the large infrastructure under the public participation and planning criteria. Staff is confident that the guidelines before you today represent a general consensus of the ATP stakeholders and that the 2019 guidelines continue the program's emphasis on stakeholder inclusiveness and continuous improvement. Staff would like to point out, however, that there is still work to be done to successfully assess the public health value of the submitted projects. Improving public health is one of the goals of the program, but the work group and staff has struggled with developing a good method for assessing this in the application and the scoring criteria. Staff plans to continue working on this issue with the Technical Advisory Committee and make it a priority in the next ATP cycle. Before we open the hearing for public comment, I would like to thank all the work group and the Technical Advisory Committee for their commitment to the program. And at the risk of leaving some people out, I would like to acknowledge some of the people who were particularly instrumental in developing these guidelines. Many of them came to every workshop and always made themselves available to work through particularly difficult issues. They are the Caltrans local assistance staff, Esther Postiglione and Tony Dang of CalWalks, Louis Zhao of OCTA, Carl Anderson and Kenny Cow from MTC, Linda Kamusian from California Bike Coalition, Patricia Chen from LA Metro, Mara Toomey from AMBAG, Sarkis Kachek from SBCAG, Jonathan Matz from Safe Routes to School, and Erica Rincon from Policy Link. And all of the commission staff, in particular Megan Pedroncelli and Anya Allenbacher, who every day help ensure the program doesn't go awry. There are many others, so please forgive me for those I missed. With that, staff recommends opening the hearing for public comment.
Okay, we will open the hearing. I have just one technical question. Since we advertise this at 3, is it any time after 3 and we're fine?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
okay, apologize to folks that came thinking we were going to be on time, but we had a big day, so. With that, public comments. Esther from California Walks. Postiglione, how do I say your last name, Esther? Okay, I was close.
Close enough. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Esther Postiglione with California Walks, here to support the guidelines and here to just sing the praises of Lori Waters, who has done a tremendous job of, doing 10 workshops, taking all the phone calls, all the emails, having lots of different perspectives and people at the table. She created a really inclusive space, and just we really support these guidelines. We're really looking forward to the projects that would come through under the guidelines that were crafted, and we look forward to continued active transportation projects across the state that improve walkability. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And it's great to hear these comments about our staff, so we truly appreciate it. Okay, Linda from California Bicycle Coalition. Help me with your last name too, Linda.
Not a problem. Linda Kamushin with the California Bicycle Coalition. I wanted to thank the commissioners today, and I really want to thank Lori Waters for the tremendous amount of effort and patience and kindness for putting together 10 work groups or workshops that were collaborative and really took into consideration everyone's needs and opinions, and really working to make this program the best program that the CTC has to offer. I would argue with Commissioner Arp on the decisions made today. I would argue that the ATP decisions are a priority for Californians all across. And I've had the opportunity to travel to different communities in the past several months who are gearing up for winning applications. They are ready to hear this call for projects and take on the projects that they're looking to implement into their communities to get people healthy, to bring down emissions, car emissions, getting people out of their cars and getting people to and from work, to and from school. This week is Bike to Work Week. Last week was Bike to Work Week in the Bay Area. There's a lot of effort and support for getting people to have safe, reliable, accessible, affordable options for getting around by biking and walking. So thank you to the staff and thank you to the commissioners for, and we encourage a support of these guidelines for this cycle 4. Thank you.
Thanks for speaking. May I just correct one thing that you said?
Sure.
Every week is Bike to Work Week.
Every day is Bike to Work Day. Counter correction.
Well said.
I think I've heard something like that before, but anyway, Erica, Policy Link, Erica Rincon.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, commissioners and staff. I'm going to be a little bit of a broken record here, but just want to express our full support of these guidelines. We've been engaged with this program since the inception, and we have really seen it continue to improve year after year. We've seen these investments bring meaningful impacts to low-income communities and communities of color across California. And I do really want to lift up the hard work of the staff, and in particular Lori Waters, for the extensive public participation process that has happened, that has continued to happen in this program and only get better. And I think it actually represents a model that we should be institutionalizing more across all the programs in the California Transportation Commission and also across our agencies in California. So thanks so much, and we're really looking forward to seeing all the new projects that will be able to get funded. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jonathan from Safe Routes to School.
Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. I am also going to sound like a broken record, but I just want to echo the sentiments of my peers in advocacy and strongly urge the passing of these guidelines. We have been extremely grateful to participate in the feedback process for these guidelines, and are especially appreciative at how workshops were added as time went on, and we had some sticky issues, and we were really impressed and gratified with the CTC's decision to continue going out and seeking more input to really make sure that the guidelines and the applications became the best that they could be, and we're eager to see the results from this cycle, and the expansion into 5 application categories we think is a really positive sign that's going to particularly increase the accessibility and success of non-infrastructure and plans. I'll finally say I also am a member of the Lori Waters fan club, and we just appreciate all of her dedication and work, and so thank you, and we look forward to seeing the results of this upcoming cycle.
Great, thank you. Well, I want to thank all of those that took the time to come and say thank you, because I know we kind of live in a world where it's you show up when we're not happy, so we do appreciate you coming to tell us when our team has done a good job. So thank you very much. It's truly appreciated. Yes, Commissioner Kehoe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just if I think the San Diegans in the room might be fewer and far between, but I want to tell you, we are doing Bike to Work Day on Thursday the 17th, which is coming right up. Thanks to Sandag and 511. There's more info online. If you register, you can get a free t-shirt. Doesn't get better than that. And I mean, San Diego has a very big Bike to Work Day, so there'll be thousands of people riding back and forth, and maybe some of us will be able to join them. So go bike.
Siri just answered and said, which bike should we be on to? Commissioner Van Kannenberg.
Thank you, Lori, for all you've done on this program and how you've made it accessible to smaller and rural communities, and how you've participated and made real meaningful outreach to communities and to stakeholders. You've done an outstanding job. So thank you for that. I still would like us to try to get our arms on quantifying the issue of safe routes to schools, and so that we can measure how well we're progressing to solving that issue statewide. So I know that's a really daunting task that right now is very hard to measure, but if we can kind of stay on the path of trying to measure that in the future, I would look forward to that.
Thank you, Commissioner. And actually, we've been working on that since you brought it up. Jonathan Matz from Safe Routes to Schools is gathering information now. So,
other commissioners? Okay, this is an action item, right?
So moved.
Second.
No, it's not.
That was the hearing.
It's a hearing. We're going to go to.
It has an A. That tells me I have to do something.
Yeah.
Okay, the 3 o'clock hearing is now officially closed. So. we will move on.
Okay, tab 26 is an action item to adopt the 2019 Active Transportation Program guidelines. Staff would like to add that after guidelines adoption, the 2019 Active Transportation Program, the fourth cycle of the program, call for projects will be posted with the electronic application available on Friday. Staff recommends your approval of the 2019 ATP guidelines as proposed in the attachment.
So moved.
Let me take it.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Gardino, a second by Commissioner Burke. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. So I apologize for the scurrying around. The commissioner agendas, we aren't playing with a full deck up here, to go back to my gaming days when I was in the casino industry. So bear with us a second, because our paper copies. Okay, I'm good. I went back and found mine, but the scurrying around that we were doing, it was because our numbers had a little gap in them. So we're good now, and we're good to go. So we will move on to item 27. Is that correct, Lori?
Yes. Okay, Commissioners, item 27 is an action item to adopt the 2019 Active Transportation Program Guidelines, Metropolitan Planning Organization Competitive Component for the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. SB 99 allows the Commission to adopt guidelines proposed by MPOs for administering their MPO competitive component of the ATP. The MPO guidelines must be consistent with the state guidelines, but they are allowed discretion in certain areas, such as asking for a supplemental call for projects and project selection criteria and weighting. The Metropolitan Transportation Commission is requesting adoption of their guidelines at this meeting so that the release of their regional call for projects can coincide with the state's call for projects. In summary, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission is requesting in their guidelines to conduct a supplemental call for projects, use the region's communities of concern criteria to define disadvantaged communities for the program, incorporate new screening criteria for consistency with One Bay Area grant housing element and complete streets policy requirements, and additional screening criteria focused on coordination with affected transit operators, and to use additional evaluation criteria and weighting. Commission staff reviewed MTC's guidelines and found them consistent with the statewide guidelines. Staff recommends your approval of the Metropolitan Transportation Commission 2019 ATP guidelines.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Burke, a second by Commissioner von Konynenberg. Is there any further discussion on this? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining for the record? The motion carries. Thank you, Lori. Well, congratulations. Item 28, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item is an informational item for your consideration, and we will be coming back in June with an action item for you. I would like to invite Stephen Keck to come back up. Thank you, Stephen.
So thank you. This is a new item that has not been before the commission before, and it's an update to the federal aid project guidelines. So this is required to be brought before the commission by commission guidelines. It's something that we've had internally to Caltrans for some time, and it really lays out how we're going to maintain federal eligibility on projects so that we can maximize the use of federal funds. So the purpose of this, as I mentioned, is to ensure that we have enough projects that are federally eligible, that we will always use all of our federal funds. Is Vince still here? I should have gotten a clap for that. Thank you. So the importance of this is when we don't use a federal fund, it goes away at the end of the federal fiscal year and we never get it back. With a state dollar, if I'm not able to spend it, it'll still be there in the next fiscal year. Not my favorite thing to do, but at least we have a second chance at it. So the purpose of the federal aid guidelines, as I say, is to identify the projects that will need to be federalized, and we do that by identifying a capital construction threshold over which one should maintain federal eligibility. And what we've done is we've gone back and looked at the newly adopted STIP and the SHOP, and the existing ATP programs to look at what threshold would make sense. How high can we put this threshold to relieve the most projects from maintaining federal eligibility? So what we've come up with is this look at where we're going with what we're recommending for this capital threshold. For the SHOP that's not the 4 asset classes identified to be funded with RMRA, we're recommending moving that threshold from $1 million to $2 million. For the 4 asset class projects, we're recommending moving that threshold up to $10 million. For the SHOP, this will mean that just about half of the SHOP will need to maintain federal eligibility. The rest would be state funded, mostly with those Senate Bill 1 RMRA funds. For the STIP, we're making a very significant change. We're moving that threshold from $1 million to $10 million. That means that only 17% of the projects in the STIP will need to maintain federal eligibility. And we do this to maintain complete flexibility with the use of our federal funds. For example, in the next year when we're going to have a shortfall in tax revenue because of the Board of Equalization's failure to adopt a new rate, those federal funds will come in very handy. On the ATP, we had not had a threshold before because the ATP is a relatively new program compared to how long we've had our federal guidelines in place. We were asked by commission staff to come up with an appropriate threshold for the ATP as well. For the statewide portion of the ATP, which includes the small urban and rural areas, we're recommending a threshold of $1 million. For the components that go to the urban regions, they actually get a share of the federal funding directly, and they will need to manage within that share. In the fund estimate that was just adopted, those shares are identified. By setting this threshold, we're basically recommending that only about 1/3 of the ATP projects need to maintain federal eligibility for use of the federal funds that are in that program. So state-only funding, which is the opposite of federalization, can be requested for individual projects on an exemption basis of these guidelines, and ideally that would be requested at the time of programming. State-only projects would be relieved from needing to maintain federal eligibility requirements in all phases, and that would be either done at the time of programming by the commission or on an individual project-by-project basis at the time of allocation. So as we do that, again, if it's part of the programming cycle, we would expect project sponsors to come forward with a request that explains their reason for wanting state-only funding if they're over that threshold. And if the project is already programmed, then on a project-by-project basis, an exemption would need to be sought, and the commission must approve that exemption. So they would be sending these requests into the department, and we would make a recommendation on this, on whether or not to state-only fund. But of course, it is up to the commission to do that. And as mentioned at the beginning, this is just an informational item, and we will bring the final item to you at the June meeting for consideration.
We have questions on this? Vince, I don't want you to get the feeling that we don't need your money, so we're making these changes just to get things going, but
It'll make it easier on them too.
Okay.
Well, the only thing I'd caution is making sure that, so this year in August redistribution, you're anticipating probably a little bit more than even last year, and it's having enough projects to apply the federal dollars to as you're maneuvering at the end of the year. That's the only thing we would advise on.
Right, and that's why we will need to take the exemption process very seriously when projects come forward for an exemption to this. We are including, of course, allowances for that, although last year you told us it was going to be less this year.
I lied.
Yeah, right. Fair enough.
Not my first time lying to you.
Well, make sure we don't miss any opportunities there for
That's exactly the point.
for Vince to tithe a little bit for us. So I have a question. Vince, earlier today you talked about 5 counties that had to go back to different attainment rules. So does that impact any of these discussions?
I have no idea. It depends on what projects are in that area. It would depend if there's any projects in that area that are applying, in those 5 counties that are applying for federal dollar projects.
Stephen, just
So
make sure
that's
that
something you need to
everybody
be aware of.
knows what that ruling was from
And
the
it's a
DC
change. So
court.
that the big challenge isn't a project that's already in a plan. it's if they're going to add or change to it, and it requires air conformity analysis. So there's a few things that would trigger us to say, okay, wait, we got to hold off. But it's
Okay.
got to go if, and then it would hold off.
Okay, well, we don't want you to hold off, so we'll
We-
make sure. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Okay, thank you. We will move on. Oh, no, I have a public speaker on this. I'm sorry. Want to be respectful. Patricia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, as I mentioned under my moderator remarks, I did want to come back and speak briefly on this item. We are grateful that this policy is coming into place and that the thresholds are being looked at. Several of the regions had asked to look at the one for the STIP, and it's going all the way up to 10 million. But we will be asking for your support on a request for Caltrans staff to further analyze the size threshold of projects that must take federal funds in the ATP program. And since SB1 has now brought in additional state funds to the ATP program, we're hoping that more projects will be able to be expedited by using state-only funds. And so we're not asking directly for a change, but we are asking the commission if you would join us in a request to just look one more time at that ATP and see if there's any way we could raise that threshold a little bit more. Thank you.
Lori, do you want to comment there?
I think staff feels that's fine to look at that some more.
So you have time to look?
Well, it would be Caltrans staff looking at it, so I guess it's up to Stephen if his staff has time.
Yeah, we have no problem at looking at that and bringing a recommendation to the next meeting.
Thank you. Oh, Commissioner Burke, go ahead.
Would this be over the 1,000 or over the 10,000?
So,
Over the 1 million. I think she used the 1 million.
So this, if I understand your question correctly, this would be looking at the $1 million threshold for ATP. They're recommending a higher level. And we'll look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Teresa, we'll move on to the next item.
Yes. Commissioners, item 29 is an information item. This is the presentation of the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program. On April 26, 2018, the California State Transportation Agency announced the award of the third cycle of the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program. Per statute, the Commission has a responsibility of allocating the funds to the selected projects. Secretary Annis is here to provide you an overview of the new program of projects.
Great. Well, hello. It's good to be here.
We recognize you.
So happy to provide this brief overview. Of course, I guess in some ways this is the fifth and last of the SB1 competitive programs. You did ATP early, just done these three programs today. And this fifth one, Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program, we awarded at agency last month. A little bit of background. We've done 2 rounds of this program before using cap and trade revenues, but now we have a much more robust program with SB1. This is also, for the first time, operating under the provisions of a bill SB9 that Senator Bell passed a couple years ago that requires a 5-year program. And so, in fact, we have a 5-year program here that covers 2018-19 through 2023-24. As I mentioned, very robust funding because of a 5-year program with all revenue from all 5 years available at this point. Cap and trade, SB1, about $2.6 billion over this 5 years. Statute authorizes the CTC to do a letter of no prejudice in case we have any projects that with local funds are ready to go a little sooner than the year of allocation of the TIRCP funds. And this statute also with SB9 authorizes something that's a bit unique to California, but is not new at the federal level, and that's a multi-year funding agreement. At the federal level, they call it, in the transit world, a full funding grant agreement. And this allows us to those projects that are going to spend over more than 5 years, in our case, to have a agreement with the state that upon appropriation, really, we can commit funds beyond that. And we'll talk a little bit more, the benefits of that as we get into the examples. Couple in your CTC item or book item, there's a lot of detail on these projects. So just in 4 slides here, give you a really quick high-level overview. In the Bay Area, Bart was here earlier. We fund about $320 million for the BART Core Capacity Project that fully funds the train control systems to go from 23 trains through that Transbay tube to 30 trains in an hour. So that's very impactful on reaching that capacity. They're really at capacity now, so that's a huge help. And we also start buying additional BART cars so those trains can all be long as they go through the tunnel. Also buy some additional Muni cars in San Francisco. Samtran Express bus along the congested 101 corridor, Caltrain electrification there. There's some funding for additional electrified train cars that we hope will allow Caltrain to go all electric on the peninsula. They've already started buying those electric train sets, but still had some diesel fleet operating on the peninsula. This should allow them to go all electric. And lastly, want to mention the SMART train in the North Bay there. They're extending both in the north and the south to the Larkspur Ferry and to the north to Windsor. So funding there helps complete that expansion project. In the Central Valley, very happy with some of the significant rail progress there. We don't have a lot of good north-south service in the Central Valley, especially linking Sacramento Valley to the San Joaquin Valley. And with this project, I think ultimately we'll have go from about 2 round-trip trains going into Sacramento to ultimately about 8. And some of these trains will allow greater service from Stockton for commuters. It also goes a little north of Sacramento to pick up some people that are in the northern Sacramento area, perhaps a commuter line there. Sacramento Light Rail's already been mentioned. This joins in your congested corridor grant for Sacramento. It included $20 million for Sacramento to Folsom light rail improvements, extending from 30-minute or service once every 30 minutes to once every 15 minutes, and extending the hours into the evening, adding express trains. So finally, people that have been around a while, I remember this goes back about a decade trying to get that express train. And as well, connecting to some of the more rural areas of the state, there's zero-emission bus that connects Shasta to Sacramento, and so that's another Central Valley benefit. Southern California, we're funding several projects that tie in with LA Metro's 28 by 28, which is, they have, of course, had the big sales tax Measure M, and this is completing funding for 5 major transit programs. Of course, in what you just adopted earlier today, you have another 2. The airport connector was one. So really, I think add them all up, about 7 major LA Metro transit projects getting completed in time for the Olympics. Also the Metrolink has some major improvements that include run-through tracks at LA Union Station, again, in time for the Olympics. There's several electrified bus projects and also Pacific Surfliner improvements that go all the way from San Diego up into San Luis Obispo. Finally, because we're in San Diego today, I want to point out a few down here. We have increased Blue Line trolley service, more reliable, more frequent. There's also funding for zero-emission buses, and along the bus line on University Avenue, which I understand is one of the most used transit corridors. There's safety improvements that include active transportation, those bus islands to speed boarding, etc. So lastly, I just wanted to touch on some of the coordinated benefits here across now our 5 different competitive programs in SB1. Many of these, I think the benefits of the combined corridor projects exceed the individual benefits. San Mateo Corridor, Of course, a big one that CTC approved today was the 101 corridor HOV hot lanes. We also, of course, now have the Caltrain electrified train cars and the electrified bus that'll run in the new hot lane. Solano 80, there's some interchange 680 corridor. We also have electrified commuter bus on that corridor. San Diego North Coast, your big I-5 allocation matches with some rail improvements we're doing in that segment. Sacramento 50 and 5 corridors, again, both rail investments on those corridors as well will complement the highway investments. And various SCAG region corridors, some of the airport connector I know is helpful for the 405. There's a lot in there that Metrolink will, I think, complement some of the highway investments. So I will end there with this slide, but happy to take any questions. And again, happy to see this complete package of SB1 project awards go forward. Thank you.
Questions for Secretary Yanes? We have any? Okay, I do have one public speaker on this item. Jack Hsu, Cleveland National Forest Foundation.
Hello, Commissioners. Again, Jack Hsu with Cleveland National Forest Foundation. First, thank you for everyone's support of this part of SB1. I think it's critically important that we promote these kinds of projects for transit, for rail, light rail. I think it's really great, but one of my concerns is, we want to fast track things because we want to move these things forward, and sometimes we forget maybe the planning process that brought some of these projects forward were not the best. And I know that's a local issue, and the applications for these grants are really dealt with at the local level. But I want to emphasize in Southern California how the importance of the Losan corridor. We came across a EIR that seemed to have been suppressed or lost from 2004 that really explained the importance of the Losan corridor, the rail corridor, and how much it can relieve congestion on I-5. And I want to bring that forward, and I hope staff at some point looks into this EIR because it was not considered in more recent transportation, regional transportation plans. And it has an effect on all of what we're doing in Southern California. It is the most used corridor, as you know, and the second most used corridor in the country. And lastly, there's one particular project that you may see next month I believe it's going to be funded from this program. It is for double tracking of Sorrento Valley track system. And I bring this up because it may have a potential conflict or at least be influenced by a settlement agreement that Cleveland National Forest Foundation has with Caltrans. The settlement calls for a study of an alternative route using a tunnel going underneath to University Town Center. If that tunnel is feasible and it's doable, we don't need to do the double tracking in this other project that comes before you. So we ask that you delay certainly expenditures in double tracking that portion until this feasibility study is done. So we can save a couple of $100 million, which can put towards the tunnel and cut the travel time between Los Angeles and San Diego by up to 18 minutes, which would be a tremendous help. So please consider that, and thank you for your support for light rail and transit.
Thank you. This is an information item, so we do not take an action on this. I do want to bring up just one little thing, though. A number of our partners are migrating to new alternative fuel sources, and Secretary Yanes and I had an opportunity to sit down with one of our operators, Foothill Transit, who's been on this journey for a while. So I would just love to encourage collaboration, sharing of best practices, because it's not simple for these folks. And I think to the extent that we don't all have to learn the hard lessons the hard way would be great. So I'm sure our commission stands ready to help. The secretary was very gracious in his time as well, and I think we can really learn from others and find some different solutions as we try to get these into service. So thank you all, and thank you Brian. So with that, we will move on, and Rick, you're up next with information items.
Thank you. Commissioners, the next 7 items, items 30 through 36, are informational items on the information calendar deemed by staff not to raise any issues, and therefore individual items will not be presented unless specifically requested by a commissioner. Hearing none, the commissioners, the next 23 items, items 37 through 59, are on the consent calendar. Please note the following changes to the consent calendar items as documented on the change list. Tab 43, approval for future consideration of funding. That item was withdrawn prior to the meeting. Tab 46, resolution C-21612 is withdrawn prior to the meeting. Tab 47, items 14, Director's Deed A0515-01-02, and item 20, Director's Deed number 018828-0101, were both withdrawn prior to the commission meeting. And finally, on the consent calendar, the tab 56, allocation for fiscal year 2018-19 Waterborne Ferry. The agenda language should read request of $3,310,000 for the fiscal year 18-19 Waterborne Ferry program in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Move the consent calendar.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Gardino, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Any further discussion? Yes, Von Kneinenberg.
Could I ask staff to look into item 56 and see if it would be appropriate for this commission to ask for a letter from, or create a letter to send to the Inspector General just requesting how those funds are spent, if that would be appropriate for us to send a letter on that and come back to us in June and let us know.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Any further comments? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining for the record? The motion carries. Okay, we will move on, and we're on number 60 now. Is that correct, Rick?
Commissioners, tab 60 is an action item. This is the final EIR for a new public road connection for the Metro Air Parkway I-5 interchange near the Sacramento International Airport. The Sacramento County Office of Planning and Environmental Review certified that the environmental impacts have been mitigated to less than significant levels. Staff recommends your approval.
We had a motion by Commissioner Gilmetti, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you. Garth?
And then we go to 61. Okay. Commissioners, tab 61 is also an action item. This is the final EIR for the Sacramento County Pedestrian Master Plan, including Howe Avenue Bike Plan and Pedestrian Improvements Project. The final EIR determined that impacts related to aesthetics would be significant and unavoidable. The County of Sacramento adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends the Commission accept the final EIR, findings of significant impact, and statement of overriding considerations, and approve this project for future consideration of funding. Staff recommends your approval.
Move it.
Whoa. Help me out here. I'm going to guess whose voice I heard first. Motion by Commissioner Arp, and I believe I heard a second by Commissioner Tavaloni, so we'll go with that. So, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you. Garth, we'll move on.
Okay. Item 62 is also an action item, and this is the final EIR for multiple safety improvements on the State Route 84 in Alameda County. The final EIR determined that impacts related to biological resources would be significant and unavoidable. Caltrans adopted a statement of overriding considerations that the benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends the Commission accept the final EIR, findings of significant impact, and statement of overriding considerations, and approve this project for future consideration of funding. Staff recommends your approval.
Okay, I heard a motion by Commissioner Gilmetti, a second by Commissioner Gardino. Are there any further discussions, comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you, Garth.
Okay, and then lastly, tab 63 is also an action item, and this is the final EIR for State Route 132 West Freeway Expressway project in Stanislaus County. The final EIR determined that the impacts related to noise, aesthetics, and visuals would be significant and unavoidable. Caltrans adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends that the Commission accept the final EIR, findings of significant impact, and statement of overriding considerations, and approve this project for future consideration of funding. Staff recommends your approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner von Konynenberg. Is there any discussion on this item?
Madam Chair, I'll be
Yes.
voting for this. I'm just wondering if they have a sense where the remaining $168 million is going to come from for the project.
Garth, can you answer that? Do you know?
Unfortunately, no.
Commissioner, we can get you that information after the meeting. Thank you. Okay.
Good to know, I think, so. Other comments? Call for the vote. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. So with that, we're going to call this day to a close, but I do want to close this meeting in honor of Nancy McFadden. We opened it to really kind of recognize Nancy's tremendous contribution to our state and to all of us. But Nancy was the governor's chief of staff. She unfortunately lost her courageous battle to cancer in March, but she was a gifted political advisor and friend and committed public servant who worked tirelessly. So I think she'd be very proud of all the work, and especially proud, I think, of all the diverse comments that we heard today. I think would bring joy. So she was so important in the middle of everything, and we all kind of knew from the business sector, didn't matter what perch you were on, that we all had to come together and figure things out. And she had a tremendous gift for helping us all get to where we needed to go. So a role model for all of us, so dedicated and committed to making our state and the world better. So with that, I would like you all to pause for just a moment and think about that smiling face that's up on our screen there and the tremendous contribution. And I think that I'm proud of the work that we all collectively did today and dedicate it to her. So with that, thank you.